Our thank you so much for being with us on UBC TV. Now it is 9 a.m. this morning, and I'm sure wherever you are, maybe at your workplace or home, I cannot begin by not saying a thank you to you for making us a TV station of your choice and being with us. Now, in the extra and extension of Good Morning Uganda, today we much want to focus on issues regarding our environment, and more so, reduction of lead pollution and exposure in Uganda. Now, with me, I have a panel of experts in what we are going to be discussing. I have those with me in studios, and I'll be joined by two online straight from Geneva, where they'll be joining us in this conversation. Join me, welcome Dr. Emmanuel Tebandeke, the head department of chemistry, Makerere University, and coordinator of the land pilot project in Uganda. You're most welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, dear listeners.
And just next to him, I have Dr. Innocent Achaye, who happens to be the manager, division of chemical safety and radiation and pollution prevention at the National Environment Management Authority, NEMA. Doctor, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning, listeners.
And just next to me, the man in a black suit with a very lovely tie, is Raymond Ruoka, a board chairman, Global Alliance on Health and Pollution. You're most welcome.
Thank you very much, and good morning, listeners.
And online from Geneva, I have Maria Paula Lila, who happens to be the executive director, Global Alliance on Health and Pollution, GAP. She'll be joining us online from Geneva anytime from now as the technical team tries to connect that. And also I expect to be joined by Lucille Okio, who happens to be a senior program manager, Global Health on Pollution, and he will also be with us online, but still on the topic we are discussing. Now, having introduced my team or the panelists, I have this lovely Monday morning and the beginning of a new month, by the way. Let's dive into the topic of discussion, which is reduction of lead pollution and exposure in Uganda. Now, before I go any further, this is being championed by the GAP. Now, GAP in full is Global Alliance on Health and Pollution. And I want to begin by bringing in Raymond here, who happens to be the board chairman of GAP. Briefly, what is GAP all about?
Thank you very much. Good morning once again, listeners. Global Alliance on Health and Pollution is a global forum that brings together governments, private sector, and civil society, advancing the agenda of addressing pollution in the health sector and the impact it has on our lives. And that is the essence of it. We operate in more than 30 countries in the world, with our head office in Geneva, Switzerland. That's why you say we have some teams will be joining virtually. And we have different governments that become our members. Uganda is already a member of Global Alliance on Health and Pollution. That's why you have NEMA here, Minister of Health, Minister of Environment, and other civil society. So it is a platform that brings together stakeholders to address issues of pollution and how it affects our lives and health. And we are happy that governments have consented on the issues of pollution and the impact it has on our lives and on the health of communities. And so we bring together these agencies to priority engagements that are geared towards conserving the environment but addressing pollution in the health sector that we look at the lives of people, humanity. So we are glad we'll be here at UBC and giving a platform to amplify these voices, but also the Uganda, being a Ugandan, I'm happy that such forum where governments and civil society and private sector come together to speak on addressing concerns that emanate resulting from pollution and impacts it has on people's health. Thank you.
Now, that said, I go to the man from NEMA, Dr. Innocent. We are talking about efforts to reduce lead pollution.
Yes.
Now, for our viewer to better understand what we are talking about, help take us through to understand what is lead, what is this metal, this element that we are saying, let's emphasis go into it first.
Thank you very much. Good morning once again. Lead is one of the heavy metals that we are very much conversant with. It is all around us, and when it is present in concentrations beyond the normal limits, then it becomes a pollutant. A pollutant, I would say, is any substance which, when released into the environment, through could be through anthropological activities, or through some natural causes, will exert some adverse effects on the environment. And as a NEMA, we are charged with the responsibility to coordinate, monitor, regulate, and supervise all activities regarding the environment. And we have a division of chemical safety, radiation, and pollution prevention, which is tasked with this very mandate to monitor all aspects to do with the chemicals that find their way. Chemicals are good substances, and there are a whole vast of them, lead just being one of them. So we want to regulate all aspects to do with the value chain of the specific chemical components within the environment. They are good, but when mishandled, they will exert certain effects on human health and the environment, which will not be good for us. Yes.
Now, Doctor, a quick one. Why front lead at this special time? Because I've had so many campaigns globally,
yes,
and their main target is this lead. Why?
First of all, lead is used in a number of products. We drive cars. We have lead, acid batteries, for instance, that are manufactured within the country. Uganda batteries comes in. We have lead which is used in paint, and paint will always find its way in our homesteads because we use paint to beautify the walls in our homes. And lead is used in a number of other products. Lead is also used as pipes, for instance, with the water pipes that flow water into our homes, and many other household products that you can think of. So lead is a chemical component that we interact with a lot, and it is good to look at the value chain of lead, and if possible, we replace lead in its usage. It has some very interesting properties. It is used in paint. Why? Because it dries quickly. It enables the drying process, quickens it. It is also gives beauty to the surface. And I think in 2005, Uganda made a drastic decision to knock out lead from petroleum. We were using lead in petrol because of its properties of improving the efficiency of the engine. Yes, but I think now we are not using lead in petroleum. So lead is we interact with it, and it is good to look at the value chain. Thank you.
Now, Raymond, we know that GAP is carrying out a number of activities. Briefly, let's look at them that are being undertaken more so in Uganda. Before I bring in Doctor.
Thank you very much. Global Alliance on Health and Pollution, as I mentioned, we operate in more than 30 countries in the world. But me, as a Ugandan, I feel honored that we are having interventions in Uganda. In a number of countries we have worked in, we have done the same interventions here we are having here, addressing lead concentration and ensuring that the products we have are intervention there. Last year, through our donor called Pure Earth, they conducted a rapid market screening on products that in markets. I remember sampled out 3 markets, including Barara Central Market, Lira Central Market, and Owino here in Kampala, to look at products, and that information was put in papers last week on Wednesday in New Vision. And when they did screening, they took the samples to Georgia, one of the best laboratories they have in the world. They found out a number of issues which were put in the paper then, that including they sampled issues to talk about cosmetics, the lead concentration in cosmetics. That's why you get a jelly and you smear on your face and your face is burned. You burn your face because of the concentration of lead, but also in ceramics and other materials. So that RMS results is what brings us here, that something must be done. So we thank Pure Earth for supporting us, and the NEMA as a key agency working together on the same. So we are concerned that these interventions are there and they're affecting lives of people. In Uganda, what they call a mumbwa, that is in local, what women take because full of calcium and other, but we found out has a huge consumption of lead. However much women like it because of the iron, which helps in the reproductive system, but also has a concentration, including pains, as the doctor mentioned here. But also as countries, we do what you call health and pollution action planning. We support the government to develop that long-term plan to address health pollution in the health programs. So that's what we do. And our target as GAP is ensure that we do, in addition to what we're doing now, we go that level of supporting Uganda, develop what they call the health and pollution action plan, which now brings together interventions that the government are going to prioritize on to address lead and other pollutants. So we have done that in Ghana, in Africa. Ghana, we have done it, even Tanzania have done that. In Senegal, supporting government prioritize interventions to address issues of pollution in the health sector. So in addition, also we do research, we collect data to show that inform programming and advocacy. The other area what we do as GAP is creating awareness within governments. That's why we have even governments as members of us, because it's a multi-sectoral forum that the governments must come together to synergize, to generate resource mobilize, but also policy engagement in there. So those are the key projects that we do in the countries, but also we prioritize society engagements as key non-state actors to developing the agenda for addressing issues of pollution in the world. So we are happy that as a country, Uganda, where I come from, we are keen and working with government to address issues talk about pollution. And lead being one of the chemicals, we have issues because of the rapid market screening side that was done last year. So we call upon government and agencies to prioritize joint interventions to address issues, otherwise they're affecting lives of people. Thank you.
Now this brings me to Dr. Emmanuel, who happens to be from the Department of Chemistry, Makerere University. And when you talk about lead, these are chemicals, definitely. Now, Doctor, take us, give us more information regarding the land pilot project in Uganda. What is it all about? As the coordinator of it, what has been achieved so far? Briefly, because I've also seen that one of our guests will be joining us online. It seems she is now able to communicate with us effectively. Let me just have Dr. Emmanuel here.
Thank you very much. Now, the lead pilot project in Uganda, the project is being implemented by the Global Alliance on Health and Pollution in collaboration with NEMA. And this project is the main goal is aiming at driving interventions that can help to reduce lead pollution and lead exposure in Uganda. And specifically, we're looking at the different value chains of lead, and we are assessing the policy, the legal and the social framework that is there for the sound management of lead to see if there are any gaps where changes or enhancement can be done. We are looking at the different value chains of lead that can lead to exposure and pollution in communities, and we are carrying out efforts to propose interventions or mitigations that can be in form of policy, in form of regulatory framework, or in form of institutional interventions that can help to reduce lead pollution and lead exposure amongst the community in Uganda.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. That is what is being done by Makerere University. This is the land project. Now, allow me welcome, that is Lucille Okeria from Geneva, who has just joined us. Good morning, and how is Geneva? Okeria, are you getting us?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
When we are able to have a very frequent and of course when we can have effective communication, we'll be bringing her, and of course later on we have also Paula, like who are in Geneva, and they are part of the topic of discussion as panelists online. So for now, let me continue with those that I have live in studios here with me now. Let's look at also the impact of the exposure. Dr. Innocent, what are the disadvantages when people get exposed to lead?
Thank you very much. In 2005, when we put a ban on lead in petroleum, in petrol specifically, a number of research had already been done, and it was discovered that lead that is used, that we use in our vehicles, have a tremendous impact on the growth of children, specifically children, and it affects their development, specifically the development of the brain cells. And it affects so much the nervous system, and so you will find that this is reflected on in so many other aspects. You know, when the brain is not well developed, the nervous system is not well developed, it affects locomotion, aspects to do with the eyesight, reasoning capacity, and so on. So lead is actually, it can have a serious impact on the health of a human being, specifically children. Lead also has a serious impacts on regard to the blood, and we would like to also study. I hope that GAP can help us in this case to have a study on specifically the levels of lead in blood for pregnant women, on children, and also adults. For instance, between 20 to about 50 years. And that study should come in handy in collaboration with Makerere University. So it's a big impact. Maybe Dr. Tebandeke could say a word or two on this.
Thank you very much for that. You've highlighted a few impacts of lead. Actually, the impacts are more diverse. That lead affects virtually all systems in the body. Lead affects the reproductive system, so it can cause infertility. In men, sperm quality is affected. In women, for example, pregnant women can have miscarriages. Those who have their cycles compromised. Lead affects the kidney. In the brain, can of course cause tumors. It also can also affect the heart. Can also lead to high blood pressure. So the way lead works in the body is that it can mimic a number of minerals in the body. We know that the enzymes, the proteins that are in the body, many of them contain some metals like iron, like zinc, like calcium. And once lead is in the body, it can insert itself in some of these molecules. So it compromises a number of body systems once it has entered into the body. And at a very high level, the force can even lead to death. But what Dr. Innocent mentioned about children is a key thing, because child development, once the brain is impaired, then the children will never be able to reach their full potential. That you have communities where the children cannot perform in class, where the children, their behaviors are inferior, and then maybe you think that maybe the children are dumb, but actually due to exposure of some of these heavy metals, you impact on their IQ, you impact on their brain development, so they can't perform in schools, they cannot perform in communities, which in the end affects the performance of communities and the countries overall.
So, no, Doctor, even before you come in, help me and our viewer understand the common sources of lead, because you've really given us the dangers. But what are some of those common sources? Yes, Innocent had talked about those lead in car batteries, then you talked about that in Fuel Uganda, saying no to that. But what are some other, because you lead the pilot project in Uganda, so what have you been able to identify?
Of course, we've identified a number of sources. Why the paint and the car battery comes out big is because of the volume or the amount of lead used. For example, in a car battery contains up to 8 kilograms of lead, and the plates, the positive and the negative terminals of the car battery are all made out of lead. And what happens is that once after 2 years, most of these batteries are dead, that you have to dispose these ones off. And of course, there are formal recyclers, but we have the informal sector who get these batteries and then crush them. And after crush them, they smelt them. In smelting, they are just burning or heating the lead to melt, and then they put it into as lead ingots. And in doing so, what is happening is that the lead can be emitted during the smelting process. It goes into particulate matter. It is poured onto soils, where it is washed away into different environmental systems, such as the wetlands. So the used car battery value chain emits a lot of lead into the system, into the environment. Of course, Dr. Chai talked about the paint industry, but also the food stuff that we eat. Some of the food that we eat is actually contaminated by lead. In some food spices, lead compounds like lead chromate or lead dichromate are added to enhance the color of the spices, which is actually very dangerous. Good enough, in the studies done in Uganda, our spices didn't contain any lead, but in some countries like in Asia, the spices contain lead. People who are carrying out mining, usually these mining activities, you mobilize soils, what is left as waste material, some of the lead can be washed away into communities. The dump sites, for example, we have a common one in Chitezi. Because of the dumping there, the different metals are dumped there, the e-waste which is dumped there, as the leachate moves out.
Maybe just, sorry to interject, I think we have Lucille. Okay, you're ready. I can see her there. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning this time. Thank you so much for your invitation. I'm glad to be here.
Now, you've joined us. We're looking at common sources of lead, but kindly take us through those urgent areas that we must cover up as gaps if we are to fight the use or polluting our environment using lead, where some are even done ignorantly. For example, in cosmetics, I know most women may look at the outcome, but not so very conscious of what other contents in this particular cosmetic they apply on their bodies.
Yes, thank you. So as individuals, we are all at risk of being contaminated by lead. But the group who is most vulnerable to this issue are children. And the Toxic Truth report that was written by UNICEF and our donor for this project, Pure Earth, showed that 1 in 3 children are actually contaminated by lead. And when we're going to looking at the African continent, 50%, it's estimated that 50% of children in Africa are estimated to have blood lead levels exceeding 5 micrograms per deciliter. This is a level which the WHO says that we need to have an intervention. And these significant higher blood lead levels bring some real health risks to our children, and this includes irreversible damage to their developing brains, as well as the nervous system and the cognitive impairments that also affect their academic performance. So this is really the issue at hand here. While there is lead present in cosmetics, there is lead present in spices, in leaded gasoline, in paint, the most affected population for this problem are children.
The UNICEF report and other reports, scientific proof that the children are more affected. Lucelle, now how best can we address what is that we must stop immediately?
So there's some preventative measures that can be put in place. Some of them I'm sure that my colleagues were able to touch on, but I did hear about some sources, for example, from gasoline, paint, consumer products, as you mentioned, cosmetics. There are cosmetics that do not use any lead in it. So I think it's also about bringing some awareness to the consumer about this issue. And of course, this also can come in as well as the products, which are, of course, imported in the country. If the product is no longer imported, then the consumer will not be able to have this issue.
Also, this takes me to ask, why hasn't lead been eliminated in some sectors? Because one would think with such a huge danger, maybe companies would automatically stop producing this. Why do we see elimination still being a problem?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That despite the campaign and the talk and the awareness, we still see lead not eliminated in some sectors.
But I think, if I can take this question, I think that there has been some success stories about, for example, phasing out leaded gasoline, which has had significant reduction in lead exposure. And I believe that enforced regulations around lead paint and industrial emissions have shown improvements to public health. Now, I think that it needs to be, this is where our work comes in, pushing forward policies and as well as emphasizing actually is at stake.
Thank you, Lucelle. We're still with you. Let me just go back to studios here. Now, she talked about policy, and this automatically brings the man from NEMA. Let's look at the policy and management framework that we have as a country when it comes to lead.
Thank you very much. Lead, just like any chemical species, tends to bioaccumulate in our bodies. Frequent exposures means that lead keeps getting into our bodies, either through the air, through the water that we drink, or even the soils, because plant species, we eat the plants, of course, keep taking up this lead, and over time, as we feast on the products, the lead bioaccumulates in our bodies. And it is the responsibility of government and every one of us to ensure that we have a healthy environment that sustains life. And so we need to put up policies, which I believe that government has done its level best in advancing policies that prevent some of these entry routes. We have the National Environment Act, as you are well aware, that was revised in 2019. And specifically, this act speaks to the environment on the management of chemicals. And the word that we use there is the sound management of chemicals that we are very much interested in. And in this particular act, you will see the listing of all the chemical species that we interact with on a day-to-day basis, and of course lead being one of them. So the act takes care of, on a broader perspective, the management of these chemical species, and you move from the act to the regulations. And recently, I must say that as a country, we launched a regulation on the management of hazardous chemicals and products containing hazardous chemicals. We met with stakeholders from the government ministries, departments, and agencies to popularize the provisions of this particular regulation. So this is a brand new regulation that's on board, that we've rolled out, and we are looking into having it enforced for all products containing chemical species. What we are interested in at NEMA is to track every chemical species from the time when it is first of all produced to the time when we use it, and eventually at its lifetime. We are interested in how it is disposed. It is very important. As a country, we are not so much a manufacturer of chemical species, of chemical products. Much of our chemical needs are met through importation. So from the time when the chemicals come in, the products come in, we are interested in monitoring who is bringing what into the country, and where are the products going, who is interacting with the products. At the end of it, once you have used your lipstick, we know there are always remnants. How do we dispose them of? We are interested in that. We also have the National Environment Waste Management regulations that we are currently implementing in the Division for Chemical Safety, Radiation and Pollution Prevention. And we are licensing waste handlers, those that handle transportation, handle storage, and even treatment of waste. And you know these wastes have got chemical species in them. And so we have a whole number of waste handlers in the country. I think most times within the city of Kampala, you will see vehicles labeled maybe hazardous waste, for instance, or labeled domestic waste, and so on. So we are in the business of managing chemicals and their related wastes in the country. And if you talk about the regulatory framework further, in country we have got regulations, and we are still developing guidelines, guidelines that will see how we can operationalize provisions within the regulations.
Very interesting,
Yes.
Dr. Innocent there. Now, I want a honest mind from Raymond. Not that doctor is just next to you, but you're from civil society, and later also bring in Lucille at this. We want to look at the gaps, because Uganda, when it comes to paperwork, I think we are a paper tiger. Regulation, we are very good. Now, when I listen to the report by Dr. Emmanuel, and what you've also just talked about, the findings, they are not in tandem with the good policies that Dr. Innocent has said. So take us through the gaps in the regulatory and management framework of our country. What is that we are lacking or not doing right?
Yeah, thank you very much, moderator. You are spot on the challenges that we see happening in relation to regulation. The most challenging element we have is the enforcement. Yes, Dr. Innocent mentioned the acts. When we look at Article 14 and 15, those two articles are very clear on guidelines on how to address these chemicals. But our concern is enforcement. And that's why we are partnering with government, through NEMA, and Parliament of Uganda to ensure that we work on avenues of strengthening enforcement, but also bringing together stakeholders together. We have held two mass-sectoral technical working group sessions where we bring different MDAs, private sector and civil society together to see what can be the solution. So our concern as civil society and non-state actors is enforcement that government has on these regulations that NEMA develops and Parliament approves. We collaborate closely with the Parliamentary Forum on Environment and Natural Resources, who are saying that for us we do our part. The other part is NEMA. So what can we do to support NEMA and government to show that these regulations are enforced? And that's a space we're talking about policy influencing. So as GAP, we shall continuously work closely to show that we work with NEMA and other agencies to strengthen regulation. UNBS, Uganda National Bureau of Standards, regulating importation of these chemicals. That's an important element, the government agency. So how do we work together so that they work together on strengthening regulations enforcement at the entry point, but also at the implementation level, at the local government level, where these wastes are being done, but also all these chemicals are being consumed there. Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, time seems to be flying, and I hope, Lucille, you're still with us.
Yes, of course.
If you can get me clear, we want to look at the way forward as far as eliminating lead so that we can come to an end of this pollution, having given us the disadvantages or the danger of exposure to lead, most particularly in children. So how best can we move forward?
Thank you. I think the Dr. Emmanuel, Dr. Ines, and Raymond have very well spoken about the role that people on the ground can take. I believe that there's also, of course, community involvement is one of the key aspects on how to reduce this issue by encouraging communities to participate through local cleanup efforts, report sources of lead pollution, promoting these grassroots initiatives, as you mentioned, so civil society on these safer recycling practices, as well as lead-free environments. So me from being away from the country and being looking at the global commitment and the international commitment, I believe that our work at GAP is to continue to advocate for this international funding to support these lead pollution projects that are happening within the country, as well as continue to highlight the need for this global solidarity in addressing this lead pollution crisis.
Thank you so much. I love the word global solidarity, that if Uganda bans such products, and we have crafty business people that want to bring them in, but also another company has said no to that. Another country has said no to that, and I think that will be a step in the right direction. Well, gentlemen, it's time for us to move here. But before we do, I just need a word or two from each one of you, beginning with the man at the helm of the pilot project in Uganda. Doctor, how best do you think we can come to an end of this very dangerous, hazardous chemical that we are having in almost a number of things that even we use at home?
I think, first of all, we need collaboration from different sectors. In the working group that we are having, we have people from Parliament, people from Ministry of Water and Environment, people from NEMA, people from academia, from different sectors. And the key thing is that we come together and then brainstorm and then see which interventions we can come up with. We've looked at the policy, we've looked at the legal and the regulatory, but other issues of awareness campaigns. At the end of the day, after using the battery and your car, where do you leave it? You leave it at your mechanic. Then after that, they break it and then they go and smelt it and then put the lead back into the environment.
The man who passed by the garage,
oh yes,
he's willing to buy and take.
So if I've been driving a car for like 10, 20 years, you are responsible for around 100 kilograms of lead that you have put into the environment. So if the communities are aware of the challenges that we have, then we can come together and see how we can address this. There are the issues of the government MDAs, collaboration between institutions, because URA at each entry point, they tend to at least do some scanning to see which kind of goods are entering, to make sure that people are not under declaring. And they have some of these X-ray scans. So they can scan some of these compounds coming in to say that this one has lead, this one doesn't have, and then they can collaborate with UNDBS and UNBS and then NEMA to see some of these compounds don't enter into the country. So we need to collaborate and then work together.
Yeah, I'll bring Dr. Innocent last. Let me go to Raymond. Yes, GAP has done a great work globally in the member countries. You're doing some good work here in Uganda, but it's just a drop in the ocean. How best can we have this?
Yeah, thank you very much. Mass-sectoral collaboration is paramount, as colleagues mentioned. You must work together, strengthen collaboration, and that's why we need to appreciate Pure Earth of ensuring that we bring this discussion together. The last 15 years I've been working on these non-state engagements. I've never seen stakeholders working together as MDAs. You see, you go to Ministry of Water, they're doing their own work. You go to NEMA, they're doing their own work. But it's because of these working groups that were established. The agencies are coming together, giving ideas. But also, what he mentioned, we need also to look at research. We need more data. And one of the others mentioned, we need to do blood lead level screening to know about these children. What is the impact of lead in the communities? When we talk about landfills, the communities go to those landfills to pick garbage and other materials. But the impact there, what is the landfills? But also, as Global Alliance on Health and Nutrition, we are committed to support government of Uganda, like any other countries we have worked in, as I mentioned before, to develop that health and operation action plan. That action planning will be an avenue for a longer term strengthening of what's to be done to address lead. But there are other chemicals, of course, we know we don't market it, but when you're talking about lead, the impact is huge when you talk about lead here. And finally, for me, is we must look at how do we ensure that we generate resources. Government, how much money does the government allocate to NEMA, to URA, and UNBS to regulate entries of these chemicals? Because many agencies talk about underfunding. We're telling government, look, can you also prioritize increasing domestic resources? Instead of looking for a white man to support us, can you also allocate in our budgets enforcement funding and the policy influencing to regulate entries of these chemicals, but also manage when you go to factories. How are you monitoring them on excreting these wastes to the communities? And we found out that when you find yams in these swamps, they are full of lead because the factory was dumping waste there, which we consume in the yams, for example. So it is imperative that we strengthen collaboration, but also enforcement of these roads. So we are committed to support government and NEMA and agencies through these working groups to continuously discuss on avenues of sustainable interventions on addressing lead, which is affecting people's lives, most particularly women and children, but also ensuring the affected communities are the center of creating awareness.
Well, thank you, Raymond. Now let me go to Dr. Innocent from NEMA. You've received a number of bullets here where people are questioning and asking, what then is NEMA doing? You've talked about the good policies, the good regulations, but unfortunately, the report doesn't speak so much as there are efforts being done. We still have huge volumes. So, as I let you off the hook, your final defense.
Thank you very much. I think as a country, we have known NEMA for specifically the actions that it has been having in regard to conservation of wetlands. But I think we need to have more discussion on the other domains that NEMA is responsible for. For instance, the management of chemicals, the sound management of chemicals. We need to have this discussion frequently. People should know that NEMA indeed is an authority in regard to regulating all aspects to do with chemicals and their usage within the country. And I must say that as a country we are doing so well in regard to many of the regulatory frameworks. But of course, we need to get specific to the individual chemical species, like lead, for instance. We look at the value chains, and then we see how we can regulate the concentrations in the different products, or if we can replace them all together, the better, because the interactions with many of these chemical species brings a lot of health concerns. We've had progress made in regard to mercury, for instance. We are using a lot of mercury, especially in artisanal mining. And I think there is an ongoing project with Planet Gold to see how we can replace altogether the mercury that is being used for extracting the gold. And we know that as a country, we are rich in gold. This is just an example. There are certainly a lot of initiatives, only that the information needs to come out to the public. As I mentioned earlier, that NEMA is licensing many companies that are handling waste in the country, hazardous waste. Where do you think the waste from the petrol stations are going? We license this, and the waste it is being handled by companies that are in the business of waste management, and the licenses are obtained from NEMA. So NEMA is doing a lot of background information, which I think the country needs to know. Thank you very much.
Well, I just want to thank you, my panelists this morning, Dr. Emmanuel Tebandeke, the Head Department of Chemistry, Makerere University, and Coordinator of the Land Pilot Project. Thank you so much for your time. I'm very eager to know more about this. And of course, Dr. Innocent Ache from NEMA, thank you so much for your presence here. He is the Manager Division of Chemical Safety, Radiation and Pollution Prevention at NEMA. And Raymond Ruoka, the Board Chairperson of Global Alliance on Health and Pollution. And not forgetting Lucelle Okirio, who has been with us straight from Geneva. Thank you so very much. Of course, we've missed Mariam Paula Leah, but please, we hope to have you next time, and her as well. And above all, my bosses, you are your. Thank you so much for being with us. Those that began the day with us from 6:30 when we open up with Good Morning Uganda, and later moved with us with an extension which is Good Morning Uganda Extra. Thank you so much for your time. Well, let's all be keen on what we use. Lead is very dangerous, more so to the infants. So together, let's join this fight. It saves you, it saves generations after us. Let's not prioritize monies, because I remember I've ever had campaigns against certain things. And I want to whisper this slowly without Dr. Innocent hearing. We had the Kavera of 30 microns and below, but because of money, job creation, all these, it didn't see us through. We hope with such a campaign, we shall beat all odds to see that we eliminate lead from wherever it is that will affect generations after us. Have a lovely day. Robert Chirabo Nyonyitono, wishing you a blessed month and a lovely day. Good morning.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra. Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
I'll call you every day, yeah yo, baby don't know.
You can now get all the Chibuzi out with MTN voice bundles. Call all networks, Kubei Dondoro. Buy a 25-minute voice bundle for only 1,000, or buy any daily voice bundle of your choice. Dial *100 *21 hash and select daily, or use the My MTN app. When we talk together, we are unstoppable.
Amina gange nde tubona kiranda Amina mu company eya WIB Uganda Limited ndi member. Wemba member company eno weyeida twalinga tutuli bulungi nga abashala abe wakawaka. Abashala abe wakawaka tuemera kuba mi baife nga bonkana abajamu nandanga twidi nti abashala tibakozesa ki nanda.